This is Dimitri, and this is going to be my second video demonstrating the problem that I'm having with my GlowShift tachometer here. In the first video, you saw this tachometer daisy chain to my other 5 gauges in my dash cluster, which has since been removed. Here it is. The problem in that video, as you saw, the tach, after being powered off with the ignition switch and then powered back on, the buttons on the front of the tach no longer work until it's disconnected from the harness and then plugged back in. I spoke to Ross, the technician at GlowShift, and he thought it might be a power problem because I had so many gauges daisy chained together, and he suggested that I split them up. At his suggestion, this video here, I'm going to demonstrate that the problem is still persistent even with the gauge split up. I have here the direct feed from the vehicle, and first I'm going to go ahead and plug in the speedometer here. Flip it over and plug it into the power in port. A little difficult to do with one hand. Okay, there we are. Okay, now this is the first plug-in. I'm going to take my keys and we're going to turn the vehicle power on. The gauge is going to power up for us, and we can see that the buttons are working, colors are changing as they should be. Now I'm going to go ahead and power off. Our gauge is going to shut down. Alright, now we're going to turn it back on. Gauge is going to power up. And as you can see, the colors are changing. And the speedometer is working just as it should be. Peak button's working, colors changing, everything's normal. I'm going to go ahead, flip it over, and unplug it. And I'm going to keep the same wire here. Let's put it right there. And there's the speedometer. Now we're going to take our tach. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to take this same wire. And let's plug it in here. Power in. Whoop. Sorry about that. I'm going to go ahead and plug it in here. Power in. Okay, that was first plug in. Gonna go ahead and power up. Gauge will start up. Now, just as before, on first power up, everything is functioning as it should. Gauge seems to be operating properly. Now, this is where the problem's always been. Gonna go ahead and turn off the power. Our gauge is gonna shut down. Now we're gonna turn the power back on. The gauge is gonna boot up. But now, nothing works on the buttons up front here. Color does not change. The peak button does not work. The gauge is completely unresponsive. Let's flip it over. I'm going to unplug it. I'm going to plug it back in. And you will see that the gauge will be working this time. Hey, look at that. Colors change, peak button works. One more time, I'll disconnect the switched power. Gauge shuts down. Turn the switched power back on without removing the harness. Let the gauge power up. And gauge no longer responding. Peak does not work, color does not change. If this is not a defective gauge, I have no clue, what else could be wrong, because as you can see, the speedometer works perfectly fine on this same feed. The tachometer does not. Thank you for your time.